Score more for less with our NK News Shop discount campaign. Ready to upgrade your wardrobe with some unique flair? At the NK News Shop, podcast listeners buying any 2 items from our t-shirt or hoodie collections will snag their third for half off. Whether you're eyeing our North Korea-themed gear for yourself or as gifts, now is the perfect time to act. Don't miss out. Head to shop.nknews.org and make the most of this limited time offer. That's shop.nknews.org. Hello and welcome to the NK News podcast. I'm your host, Jacco Zwetsloot, and this episode was recorded on Monday, the 23rd of December. Happy Festivus, belatedly, to those of you who celebrate it. Our special guest returning to the NK News podcast studio today is Korea Risk Group Director and Kookmin University Professor Andrei Lankov. Welcome back on the show, Andrei.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Andrei, the last time that you were on this podcast, I went and checked, was episode 307 in September 2023, so that's more than a year ago. Much has happened since then.
Yeah.
Amongst other things, North Korean soldiers have been deployed to Russia to help Vladimir Putin in his war on Ukraine, and Kim Jong-un has announced that he's no longer interested in peaceful unification with South Korea, and North and South Korea have once again begun sending propaganda leaflets to each other's side. So let's start with an opinion question. What do you see as the most significant development since you were last on the podcast?
Of course, the North Korean soldiers, actually, let's say North Korean ammunition and North Korean soldiers in Russia and Ukraine. This is the single most important event in the mid or short or mid-term.
Wow.
If we are talking about the long-term, decades,
Yes.
maybe the official, admission of the obvious that peaceful unification is not going to happen. Of course, it has never been going to happen. Kim Jong-un just stated something which every serious person has never had the slightest doubts about, but it's probably not going to have a kind of immediate impact. It's a question of decades. So 2 major events.
It's the sending of ammunition and the sending of soldiers.
Ammunition, maybe.
We've got numbers of somewhere between 10 and 12,000 soldiers apparently now. We are getting, of course, some in the fog of war. There is some confusion about numbers and exactly where they've been deployed. Now, you have the benefit of me that you speak Russian, and so you're able to look at Russian reports. But as I understand, Russia and North Korea have not yet actually, acknowledged that there are North Korean soldiers there, not officially.
Yes and no.
Because
if you look carefully, initially it was a denial.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of stone-faced denial.
Yeah.
It's not happening. But it lasted for virtually a couple of weeks. Then, starting from late October, the officials on both sides began to give sort of deliberately imprecise answers, which in the diplomatic language were pretty much basically admission. They did not say, yes, the soldiers are there, but they put something like, if something which the international media is writing about is true, it will not be a violation of the international law or something like that, which is again in the diplomatese. If I remember the correct name of this language, it means yes, of course.
Well, why do you think they're being so diplomatic about it?
Basically, I don't know, but the National Intelligence Service of Republic of Korea believes they know. Because there was a report in early November, if I remember correctly, that the NIS report about some high-level visit of some unnamed, I believe they know the name, but they did not make it public, high-level Russian official, where, according to the NIS, in Pyongyang, they discussed how to behave, and they decided to basically be sort of honest. By the standards of diplomacy, quite honest, I would say.
Vladimir Putin last week gave his annual long...
Yes, 4 hours.
Did you watch any of it?
No. I never watch.
Okay. Do you know if he mentioned North Korea at all?
No, he did not. He did not, because I never watch because it's too lengthy, and I usually just have a short summary. It has been noticed by many that he did not mention it.
Do you find that remarkable? In the current circumstances?
No. I think the current line is sort of hint the line, obviously, of both sides, and they believe there is sort of agreement on this line, is to admit, to make hints that the soldiers are there. Don't try really suppress the news in media. And Russian internet is heavily censored, but many of our listeners might be surprised, but it's far more free than, say, internet even in China. So I think it's pretty much impossible to completely censor it, but I don't see many efforts to control this information at all. So it's obviously also a part of policy. So some bloggers, including and largely pro-government bloggers supporting the war, everything they write about it, and they don't get into any trouble. They don't get any warnings about it. But the official line is silence.
Now, for North Korea, we've talked a bit about this over the last few months. What are they getting out of it? And I think the consensus seems to be they're getting, number one, money and perhaps material aid from Russia, but also they're getting combat experience, which they haven't had for some decades.
Yes.
Do you agree that those are the two most important things?
Yes, and I would say they hope. I'm not sure whether they will actually get. They might, but I'm not sure. They hope to get some sensitive military technologies, which otherwise they would be unable to obtain. But the order, I would agree, first of all, material support, hard currency, or maybe shipment of wheat. If you look at the North Korean media now, they suddenly began to write a lot about health benefits of wheat and wheat flour, which reminds me South Korea of the early 1960s, when it was flooded with the American food aid, usually provided as wheat and wheat flour, of course, and they started a campaign in Seoul telling the people that wheat flour and bread and everything made of wheat flour is beautiful and tasty and very good for health. And the North Koreans are doing exactly the same now. And so I would say that obviously there is a significant food aid coming there. And yes, it's number one. Then battle experience. Judging by the first footage of the North Korean soldiers at the battlefield, they are not learning much. Because the first few footage, which was released starting from roughly the 12th of December, they basically are behaving as if it's the Second World War.
What do you mean?
Attacks in large groups with pretty much neglect for the drones. And it's basically the infantry tactics, I would say, Second World War. Well, it began in the Second World War. It was a normal behavior of infantry on the battlefield until maybe 10 years ago. So they are not learning, and some people, they basically say that, you see, one of the military observers even quoting some famous Russian general about the Japanese army, that beautiful, tough soldiers and very non-creative, incapable officers. With clear hint that it's applicable to North Korean troops in Russia. But maybe he is even partially correct. But in the long run, I think they will learn.
Do you think we can expect to see numbers increase sharply, or the deployment to continue until the end of this war, whenever that is?
I would say yes and yes. I'm not sure, of course. Mr. Putin is not asking for my humble advice. But talking about numbers, the current number, and in this regard, I'm inclined to believe the NIS, National Intelligence Service, South Korean Intel, I'm inclined to believe their reports, because so far, what have they said openly and officially in their official capacity about the North Korean troops deployment? Pretty much everything has been later confirmed. So I'm sort of taking their report seriously on this issue, because so far they have been first to bring the news which were eventually proven to be correct.
Do you think they have agents on the ground there, the NIS, or are they getting this from Ukrainian intelligence?
I think they have agents of the ground because, frankly, Ukrainians would seriously manipulate the intel to serve their own political purposes. And I don't see this manipulation in what is published by the South Koreans. But having said that, they basically said 12,000. It's not enough. It's not enough to make a serious difference. According to the estimates, the Russian side is basically getting about 25,000-30,000 new recruits every month.
These are Russians.
Only Russians.
Okay.
And you see, if it's a war where the Russian side needs about 25 to 30,000 soldiers every single month.
Right, and 15,000.
Arrival of 10,000 or even 15,000 is not. It's nice, but it's not going to make a big difference.
Right.
Therefore, I think it's most likely to be sort of a pilot project, as they say. That is, it will be seen how efficient they are. Judging by what is known, they are not terribly efficient so far, but it's a question of time. Whether they will make a difference, and if they do, I think that we are going to see more soldiers, maybe many more soldiers, arriving to Russia.
Is there an internal danger for North Korea in sending too many soldiers?
Do you imply that South Korean tanks are ready to drive to Pyongyang?
No, just...
you think that Donald Trump ordered an invasion of North Korea the second day after his inauguration?
Not that either, no.
So what's risky?
Well, okay, so you're asking me the questions here.
Yes, because I don't see any risk, because you say risks, it means that they are under threat of invasion. In theory, in the long run, they have. In the short run, no, they don't.
I mean, internally, if you have a lot of people whose sons are fighting in another country in a war that has nothing to do with the defense of North Korea, is there a risk of creating some domestic unrest or domestic unhappiness among the populace?
Yes, to an extent, but you can flood this unrest with money. I'm pretty sure that the Russian side is paying. I think that payments received per soldier, per capita, so to say, per head, by the North Korean side are quite modest compared to what the Russian government is paying its own soldiers. Because, as many historians noticed, this is the first war in 300 years when the Russian soldiers are paid extremely well. I'm not joking. Since the 17th century, it's the first large war which is fought by a well-paid professional army. And maybe North Koreans are getting less, but they're still getting a lot. And if the government takes, 75 or maybe even 80% of their earnings, leaving them or their families, if they are killed, remaining 20%, it will seriously change the mood.
Curious to hear the rest? Become an NK News subscriber today for access to the full episode. Head to nknews.org/join for more information. If you're already a subscriber to NK News, you can listen to full episodes from your preferred podcast player by accessing the private podcast feed. For more detailed instructions, please see the step-by-step guide on the NK News website at nknews.org/private-feed.